resolution will now provide an overview of the findings of fact supported by the GC method.
Good evening, everybody. Chris Giggy, just a reminder, we're your project managers for the bond design and construction projects. So you've already had quite an evening. So I'll just go over this very quickly. Hopefully in your packets you do have the finding of facts. Last month there was kind of a first reading of that. So what we're looking for tonight is to have the hearing for the public if they want to comment on this as required by the Oregon statutes. And then later, I understand on your board agenda would be the vote to approve that findings. So what I wanted to do is just a really quick review and then see if you had any questions before that, please. So CMGC, kind of a mouthful, what is it? It's really a method of selecting the general contractor as opposed to the hard bid method. This is a way that we can involve them during the design and really get a lot of value. It's a very widely accepted method of contractor selection that is used throughout the state, really throughout the country, for a lot of public institution construction projects. Very common if you're watching what is going on. Next one, please. This is just a reference to the ORS. It's basically language in here that says that as the local contract review board, you have the authority to review this, and this is just a requirement of this, that you would approve this findings that allows us to proceed with this solicitation method for the contractor. Next, please. And in short, the language in that findings that you have before you really boils down to the summary, and this is really taken from that last section at the end of it that says really what we expect to receive by using this method, and that is that we expect that there will be cost savings and reduced risks, and a lot of that is because what we're going to do to select the contractor is not just go in with the lowest price, but really the most qualified firm, and a combination of that with a very competitive price. So we'll get to score all of that together as we do. And we also get to look at their specialized expertise for doing projects of this type. We also get a chance to really participate in their safety program, not just somebody who might come in and build it cheap, but we have to struggle with safety. But of course, we will go through a competitive selection process, and so it will not diminish competition in our selection. That's really the primary elements of the findings, and that's really all I wanted to do to summarize this for you this evening. Is there any questions I could answer for you before you come to the formal hearing period? Yes, please.
I just had a quick question. I mean, clearly, when this building was new, it was amazing. but then we soon had problems, so will we make sure that these problems don't reoccur?
Yeah, a lot of the elements that you're referring to are kind of a combination of things. So some of it could be design elements, and those are decisions that are made. We've actually been talking to some of the folks historically about some of the decisions that were made here, and some of those were made for reasons at the time they felt like they needed to be. Other things are really elements that we'll put into the design specifications. I can tell you that our opinion is that the college, with the funds that are available from the bond and grants and other things, has a very healthy budget to make sure that the new OCAT building is going to be constructed very well and to a very high level of quality. And then so much of the funds, as you know, are going to go into making some of the improvements to the existing facilities.
Right, and I understand probably some of those are design issues and choices that you never can anticipate everything until you use it. So clearly that's the case with this building and the others in Lincoln City.
Any other questions? Great.
Lauren, do you have any comments registered?
No registered public comment.
Okay, so we're closing the public comment. We've already had the discussion from the board, so I'm going to close this hearing. The acceptance of findings of fact exempting the Go Bond construction project from the traditional competitive bidding requirements and adopting the CMGC method of solicitation will be an action item in tonight's upcoming business meeting. This hearing's now adjourned. Okay. That's that part.
Okay.
Now we're going on to our regular board meeting.
You're gonna wear out that gavel tonight.
I know. I like it. So I'm going to call to order the regular scheduled monthly board meeting. Call to order introduction in the board roll call.
Okay, Rich Emery,
Sorry, I'm here. I'm here.
Debbie Kilduff,
Here.
Chris Chandler. Here. Marion Mann,
Present.
Paul Schuytema,
Here.
Bud Shoemake,
Present.
and once again, Patrick Alexander will be on the roster shortly. We have a quorum.
And we're on to,
Okay, well, I want to welcome our guests to the Oregon Coast Community College Central Campus for our Board of Education business meeting. I also want to welcome any students, staff, or faculty that are in attendance or are going to be watching online. My name is Marshall Roach, and I serve as the president of Oregon Coast Community College. And I just want to remind everyone that pursuant Senate Bill 1502, this public meeting of the Oregon Coast Community College Board of Education will be recorded and posted on the college's website
Going downstairs.
7 days of the meeting. And with that,
You going downstairs?
oops.
I'm sorry. With that, I want to ask Amy Southwell, who's in attendance and is the Lincoln County Clerk, to please come forward, and Mr. Patrick Alexander for the official swearing in of our new Zone 2 board member.
Take one of these and we'll sign after. Now, I'll hold up your right hand. I, Patrick Alexander. Do solemnly swear. That I will support the Constitution. Of the United States of America. And the Constitution of the State of Oregon. And the laws thereof. And will faithfully and honorably. Demean myself. In the office. Of the Oregon Coast Community College District.
The Oregon Coast Community College District,
Board Member Zone 2.
Board Members of Zone 2,
To which I have been appointed.
to which I have been appointed
To the best of my ability.
to the best of my ability.
Suitable for Friday.
Have a nice night.
And thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
So we have the business meeting minutes to, from January 15th. Do I have a motion to approve them?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Jumping right in.
It's the first official one. Is there any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Opposed?
Aye. I'm in favor. Having a hard time with the audio here. Sorry.
Glad we're hearing you, Rich. Okay, finalize the agenda? Any changes? No.
None that I know.
Okay, so, communications, are there any written communications, Lori?
No written communications,
And there's no public comment on agenda?
no public comment.
Okay. And President's response to the public comment? No. Okay, so college reports, the OCAT renovation project update, Chris and Nancy.
Hello
we're ready. Us again. You all should have the report in your packets. And Dave and Chris have done such a great job of everything they've had to do so far that I think I'm going to be redundant on a lot of what I have to say. But at least as a recap, we'll tell you that the design is moving along in the OCAT building. We did have some great focus groups. Dave did a tremendous job of communicating with the community to give people the opportunity to have input on what's going to go into the OCAT building. And the focus groups met, and now the design team is taking that information. They're going to bring it back to us by the end of March. We're hoping that they're going to bring us 2 to 3 concepts of what they're thinking the building might look like overall. Once you've completed your action item tonight about the finding of facts, we will advertise for the CMGC. That'll go into the DJC and on the college website and in the Yachats News this Friday is the intention. And we hope that at the April board meeting, we'll be bringing you a recommendation for a qualified CMGC firm to join the team. So probably the most important thing in the report is on page 3. What you really care about is what's going to happen and when. As I said, we'll be sending out the RFP for the CMGC this week. And we'll bring that recommendation to you in April. The schematic design for the OCAT building will start in April, and we'll be moving through that. And then this summer, we really hope we're going to be able to do some underground utilities and some of the early site work in preparation for that building. At the same time, this summer, we're hoping that we can do what Glass is calling the fix-it list, which is we're going to start some of the repairs and maintenance issues, addressing some of those on the various campuses. Chris Rogers is having a wonderful time identifying the priorities for the fix-it list. He's just having this cascading thing of systems that are giving him issues lately, and so it's really helping us hone in what the top priorities are going to be for work this summer. And then we hope to break ground for the actual OCAT building, start construction in the fall. So that's where we stand right now. Do you have any questions?
Fall is kind of an interesting time because the monsoon quickly follows.
Yeah, we don't love the fact that we're going to be doing construction over the winter, which is part of the reason we're going to try and get some of the site utilities, some of that site work done early while it's still dry. If we can get gravel down, things that'll help with solidifying underneath the building, that'll be that much better.
Although dry here at the coast is relative, right? So drier, we hope to do that before we really get into the wet weather. But certainly that's advantageous versus pushing off the start of construction into next summer, just in terms of cost.
I just want to comment on, you said that Chris Rogers is excited about the projects. I don't know how excited he actually is. He's more relieved. Special thanks to him. He was here at 2 o'clock this morning with Spencer trying to get things up and running because post-storm things wouldn't start. He had to improvise. So just want to special recognition to him for making this meeting happen because we almost didn't have school today because of it. So yeah.
Did our new roof survive the storm?
Yes, the roof did survive the storm. So we're very happy about that.
Any other questions?
Well, I think the building, we should keep in mind that, we saw the intensity of what is going on yesterday, really. And it's not that we haven't had thunderstorms and lightning and hail and all of that, and snow and ice and so forth. But it does seem to be, the intensity is notching up every year. And so, with the new building, I think we also need to kind of have some foresight into the fact that we can expect more and more intensity, at least for the next 4 years.
One of the great things about building permits and the building code is that every time something happens, they up the building code. 20 years ago, we weren't building buildings to survive a 9.0 or 9.5 earthquake. The code just continues to improve, to face the reality of what we're dealing with.
So this building would also be an earthquake
It'll be up to the code. There's various levels that you can construct a building for an event like a earthquake. You can construct it to where people can get out safely. You can construct it to where it's going to stay standing, but maybe not usable. Or you can create it to a level that it can be a place for the community to come as an evacuation point if they lose their homes. So that'll be one of the decisions that's made along the way of, what level of use do we want to have this building for?
So the geo stuff,
Oh, the geotech survey?
yeah, when does that happen?
Actually, we just started. We've got enough information from the design team from what they've collected already. But in order to kind of, get ahead of the process, we are looking at a couple of different locations. And so we're going to have our geotech. They're actually, I think they were here this afternoon.
Great.
So they're going to get the geotech going right away.
Great.
We just don't want to hold up the design process.
Right.
Yeah, please.
Yeah, and I'm thinking, if there is a big earthquake, which is a matter of when, not if, really, and maybe it won't be my lifetime, given my age, but it is likely that our bridge won't hold up, and so I think we have to think about also all the folks that will be stranded on this side of the bridge, especially at Hatfield, and surrounding areas, not just houses that are being destroyed as well.
Well, and what Nancy alluded to earlier in terms of the levels of structural for seismic reinforcement, one of the nice things we could do is, she referenced immediate occupancy. That's that place where it's a refuge for folks versus just a safe exit. We can actually do a cost analysis of that and identify that for the college to look at and say, in some cases, it's really not a big cost. Just to add a little more seismic bracing so that it can be immediate occupancy.
So the board will get to see that information eventually, right?
We'll be evaluating.
We'll be bringing you all these questions, like, we have a leadership committee that's making the decisions, and all that information will be brought to them. Thank you.
Thank you.
I neglected to close public comment after the last item, so I'm closing public comment on the agenda items.
Okay.
And now we're on to President's report.
Yes, thank you. And see the report up. It's coming. There we go. Okay, so this is the President's report for February 25th, 2025. Next slide, please. I want to be the first to congratulate our new board member, Mr. Patrick Alexander. Congratulations, and thank you for being willing to step up in this role.
Thank you.
I want to call out our fall 2024 honor roll. Congratulations to our Sharks. I just want to point out that we had 167 students that made the honor roll, which means a 3.25 or greater. However, of those 167, 112 of them made the president's list. That means that they had 3.75 to a 4.0 GPA. Why is that significant? Statistically speaking, that is a great percentage of our students here, and to me, that completely calls out the work that our faculty are doing with our students. They are absolutely giving the best product, the best education that I think you can ask for in any community college in our state. And so their commitment to our students is what's elevating that bar so that we can have 112 students on the president's list. That's just astounding to me, and I'm very proud of our faculty and support staff for making that happen. So next slide, please. We had our first PAC graduation. And so the inaugural graduation took place here. We had Representative Gomberg in attendance to honor our students and some interesting careers that the students have spoken that they want to enter into: electrical, plumbing, sprinkler fitting, linemen, and some of the other trades. And this was a really good first cohort for us because it really helped us to kind of highlight some of the programs that we're going to be looking at expanding with the OCAT building. Next slide, please. As you know, we had a town hall that took place here that was an unbelievable showing. We were very happy to have Senator Merkley and Representative Val Hoyle in town to answer questions, and the turnout was quite remarkable. It was the most people I've ever seen in here, and it was a really good community showing, and I was very, very happy to see some board members there, and it was just a really good event for our community, I believe. Next slide, please. We had some attendance at the Oregon AI conference that took place at the Hatfield Center. So myself and Dr. Flores were in attendance there. Good event, learned a lot. They talked about a lot of things that were probably over both of our heads, but very good introduction to us out here in Newport as to what the things that are going to be coming that we should be looking for. Again, the reason for being there was because how is AI going to impact some of the programs that we're looking to invest into? And that's why I was there, was to learn how we might incorporate some of those ideas into our new program. Next slide, please. And as Marion mentioned earlier, our career CTE day happened, and I want to give a special shout out to Becky York. She was the driving force between getting that off the ground for us. The Career Expo was just amazing. The partnership with our Lincoln City School District partners who have now left the meeting, but they were very instrumental. You can see right there the different people that participated in the Career Tech Expo and the CTE Day. So a lot of good representation from our community partners and with our school district. Next slide, please. And Representative Hoyle was in town in Toledo, and so Bud and I had the opportunity to visit with her, looking at some ways that we might qualify for some congressional spending to look at expanding what we're doing out there in Toledo. And so she came out, got to see kind of our welding site, and we get to talk a little bit about some of the challenges and the potential opportunities that we see in the Toledo area. And Bud got to show off his lift with the Oregon State Beaver on it, which was quite nice. Next slide, please. This is just some stuff that, some engagement is things that I was involved in. I was fortunate enough to have a podcast done on the Double R Show. So if you are interested in hearing that, it was on the February 6th episode. Some new leads in town. Appreciative to Double R team and Roger Robertson for having me and inviting me. We also held another listening session here on campus where we fed the students. On February 10th, had a little pizza afternoon listening session. I got to just kind of hang out, have some pizza, and just listen to our students about what's going well, what things they'd like to see changed. And it just so happened that I didn't even think about this, but by freak chance, it was, we scheduled it during midterm week. So the students were just over the top appreciative that we were doing that for them. And I had quite a few students that I got to interact with. Next slide, please. Some upcoming events. We have our OCCA Legislative Summit coming up, and I know at least one of our board members will be attending March 5th through 6th in Salem, Oregon. I will also be in attendance. We also have our live town halls coming back Friday, February 28th with Senator Anderson and Representative Gomberg. That will be this Friday at 8 o'clock. It'll either be in person, they'll either be in person or Zooming in, depending on what their schedules look like, but we're going to have a viewing availability both at Lincoln City and here in Newport. And then the board retreat. We are going to be rescheduling the board retreat. There was some conflicts that some of our board members had, and so we're going to try to rebook that so that we can have as many people in attendance as possible. Next slide, please. And of course, how can I forget our pearls of wisdom? I again extend an invitation to all of our board members, all of our faculty, staff, and community members to please attend. Very excited about that. This will be my first event, and I'm excited to hear from the folks that are our MCs. We have one of them here with us, and then of course Representative Gomberg. So Representative Gomberg will be assisting Patrick Alexander on MCing the event. I'm excited to hear that. I hear it's quite the show. So, and then I just want to remind everyone, for the community especially, that, you know, now is time to be applying for our scholarships. We have a lot of wonderful scholarships through the foundation, obviously sponsored by, or fundraised through the Pearls activities. We really want to get the word out there. So if you know of anybody, let them know that we are currently, applications are going to be open now through May 1st. We want to get as many applicants as we can, because we certainly don't want to hang on to that money. We want to give it to as many students as we possibly can. Next slide, please. Our library events that are going on, we have a couple things. I love my library. Open house activities are listed there. We also have our Black History Month book display, which is sitting right there to my right. You can see it. And then the Books We Love campaign is going on in the library. And so please visit our library if you are a student or even a community member. We have a lot of community members that come and use our resources here. So all are welcome. Next slide, please. Some things that are going on in the news. You can see our newest board member there plastered all over the media. Community is very proud, and as are we. Next slide. Have some articles about our recent town hall meeting. Next slide, please. And some highlights around our Latino residents in Lincoln County advice workshops that we've had, and some news from the Career and Technical Expo that we held. Next slide, please. Some Small Business Development Center workshops being highlighted, and our OCCC annual lecture resumes Thursday, February 20th, and you can visit the Yahats News for that article. It has some good advertisements for that series. Next slide, please. Are there any questions from the board or anyone else? That concludes my presentation.
I just noticed on that lecture series link that you have on the website, it didn't want to work for me, and I'm not sure why.
Interesting, we'll have to check that. So we'll look into why that is. There's obviously a typo somewhere in the link that's not allowing me to access this thing. Any other questions, comments?
Awesome stuff.
Okay, that's my report. Stands as written. Thank you all. Appreciate it.
Oh, and you got did you say, we all got a list of all the stuff you've read this month?
No?
When does he sleep?
He was very busy.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that.
Bruce? A report on the Title IX ADA drug and alcohol.
Good evening, welcome to the sleepiest part of your agenda, federal compliance. And plenty of action going on with federal compliance these days, but this is an annual report to update you on where we are at with Title IX compliance, American Disabilities Act compliance, and drug and alcohol-free schools compliance, just so that you're in the know. Now, let's roll the slideshow. It's really exciting. So, Title IX, quick refresher, is federal law prohibiting the discrimination of access to academic and educational programs based on sex. And that has been around for quite a while. It has seen many different kinds of iterations, and you will have a different part of the program, your agenda tonight, to deal with the latest change in iteration. And it does apply to everyone we are connected to, which is important because it's not just students. It also is, do employees have access to the resources they need to do their jobs? And then any contractors or vendors that are on site and that we do business with must also say that they follow Title IX and do not, they have practices that prevent sexual harassment and discrimination. And it applies to the behavior of visitors on our campuses or in the events that we hold. So it applies to everyone. Next slide. Part of Title IX is constantly understanding the definitions of sex discrimination and sexual harassment. The types of sexual harassment most likely to occur in our organization and with educational programs happens to be quid pro quo harassment. The classic there is people with power might say, to get your grade, I'm going to ask you to do these things. And if you don't get the good grade. Hostile environment is also a place where there may not be something so egregious as a quid pro quo arrangement, but we create an environment where people feel as though they are not welcome, not able to fully participate, and do not have access to that, and that exclusion, the environment excludes them based on their sex. This is most often the type of environment that we encounter with investigations. Next slide. We also have other types of sexual harassment that are around sexual violence and, of course, sexual assault. And one that was added a while ago, but also is important for people, is stalking, and that we can have students with visitors or others who are stalking, and that would fall under a Title IX violation. Next slide. So in order to actually have a Title IX complaint, the Title IX coordinator, and that is myself, and then I have two deputy coordinators, and that would be the Director of HR, Joy, and Director of Vice President for Finance, Robin. The coordinator actually is supposed to manage the process, and deputies may help implement the process. But all three of us, based on the circumstances, may act in certain roles to lead an investigation. To have actual knowledge, the Title IX coordinator has to have a report directly from the individuals involved. Otherwise, I don't have direct knowledge of a potential violation. So I have to eventually collect that information to just start the process. It doesn't mean that there aren't other processes like student conduct or state sexual harassment laws that would fall if we didn't have direct knowledge. But for Title IX, federal, there must be actual knowledge that a report has been made of an alleged violation. And there must be a formal complaint. So there actually has to be something written given to the coordinator, an actual complaint. Next slide. When we receive a viable complaint, we are to offer that individual who is an alleged victim of a particular set of actions supportive measures so that they are able to continue to have access to their educational opportunities, their employment opportunities, or access to college facilities or programs that they visit as guests or use. So a good example would be a patron of the public library that we offer. We would not want them to feel excluded, and we have to work with them to find ways so that they can continue without experiencing additional harassment. That's what supportive measures are. We start investigations, and the alleged victims can request that no investigation happen. They control that most of the time. The exception is if the individual or individuals that they are alleging committed a potential Title IX act, if the coordinator sees a pattern of those individuals and believes that that individual or individuals create a danger for the greater community, the Title IX coordinator must invoke an investigation, even though it is against the wishes of the previous complainant, because there's a danger to the community. So that's part of the assessment. So though you can report anonymously or report without any investigation happening, and nothing will happen, there is the potential that there's a pattern that then would invite an investigation against the wishes of the alleged victims. Difficult place to be. Investigations are conducted through trained personnel. There are hearings that are held, in front of a decision maker. So an investigator cannot be a decision maker. This is two independent people, either within the institution or external to the institution. And there always must be the opportunity for complaint or appeal by either the complainant or the respondent, person who's accused of violation. Next slide. This applies to virtually everything and anything that is involved in the educational program or the employment or participation with Oregon Coast Community College. If we had students that were overseas, Title IX does not apply, but other sexual harassment or sexual violence codes of conduct or state law might apply. So somebody can't just be in Canada and be free of committing a sexual violent act and think that they are okay. Next slide. As again, this is your Title IX team, coordinator and deputy coordinators, and the roles that we play. We are supposed to go through annual training and make sure that we are current on the current definitions and legal requirements. Next slide. And so giving you a 3-year running total of Title IX reports, investigations, hearings, and appeals. So in 23-24, we did have a Title IX report. We did conduct an investigation. There ended up in the situation that there was no hearing required, which meant no appeals. Next. ADA, I imagine you're all familiar with, the American Disabilities Act in Section 504, and prohibits discrimination solely based on the disability in employment, services, or accommodations. And then the 504 component is really around discrimination based on disability of programs, activities, public, private, receive federal financial assistance. So because we receive student financial aid, we have federal grants, we are also required not just to comply with ADA, but also comply with Section 504. Next. This is our non-discrimination statement and our statement about non-retaliation. If a student reports or an employee reports an alleged violation of the ADA or Section 504, there cannot be retaliation against them in any form for having filed a report. So we have made sure that we're pretty clear about that, and that's been a focus of training for the last year, is helping people understand, not just they understand the ADA piece and not discriminating, but also retaliation and not doing anything that would appear to be retaliation and understanding what those definitions are. Next slide. We have a department, Student Accessibility Services. That is a department that students submit documentation to if they believe that they are eligible for ADA-based accommodations. We review that documentation. We develop a plan of accommodations for their academic experience that do not involve a material change in the course content, material, or delivery. Sometimes faculty or as an employer, we have to do some things differently that take some more time, may be something we're not used to doing, but that doesn't prevent us from having to do that as an accommodation to make sure that that person is as successful as anyone else. Next slide. We offer students a grievance process. So if they believe, in some cases, if they are not getting sufficient accommodation or their accommodations are not being followed, they can choose to use the student grievance process in order to have their situation described, have other parties involved describe what they're trying to do, and then the grievance committee tries to reason what's going on here and create a solution to meet both parties' needs if there is a mutual solution. decisions provided, and then there's appeals process. If the student is unhappy with that decision, it's reviewed by a secondary individual. And if the student really doesn't agree with even the appeal decision, they are, on our website, we show them how they can file with the Federal Office of Civil Rights, or they can file a complaint with the Higher Education Coordinating Commission, or they can file a complaint with the Northwest Commission on Colleges and Universities, or they can go to all three, should they choose. Next slide. In terms of ADA violations, in 23-24, we had 2 that worked their way through the process. We had reports, did 2 investigations. Those investigations, the outcomes of those investigations were appealed. Those appeals were upheld. Both of these involve students. Those decisions were then, they filed complaints with the Federal Office of Civil Rights. The Office of Civil Rights, when they receive a complaint from an employee or a student, they begin the process of establishing a voluntary resolution agreement. So you don't immediately have something you're found at fault. They have you work with a mediator that mediates between the student or employee and the institution, and you try to find where did things go amiss? What are the expectations of the student or the employee not reasonable? Were the actions of the college unreasonable or insufficient? And you come to a resolution to agree, this is how we resolve the situation. And in both of these situations, we came to a voluntary resolution agreement with the individual, implemented those, our parts of those agreements. And sometimes it's policy adjustments, sometimes it's allowing to retake certain courses, sometimes it's forcing a different accommodation that we didn't believe was reasonable, and we did learn that it is reasonable that we should have to do that, and we would do something to correct it. So we're made whole again. And then there's no record anywhere that we don't have an Office of Civil Rights violation because it was mediated out as a voluntary resolution. And we have met our obligations. So long as we meet our obligations under the OCR agreement, everybody's good. Next slide. As an educational institution, no drugs, no alcohol. This has been around for quite a while, and pretty clear what the expectations are with this. So where we address issues around drug and alcohol are in our standards of student conduct. We make it clear what our expectations regarding students are. It is in our employment documentations and our employee training. We have included in our drug and alcohol policies, we can provide help people understand the legal sanctions that they would face if they were found to be in violation of the Drug-Free Schools Act or in possession outside of the campus. We try to provide information around the health risks of use and abuse. We also provide guides to resources to assist with those that may be struggling for confidential support. And we also make it clear that we have the option of imposing options including student expulsion, suspension, or terminating employment. So people understand the institutional consequences, not just the external legal consequences. Next slide. Employees go through annual training through Vector to understand their role and the college's stance around drug and alcohols. And we provide an annual notice to students where they can go find this information on our website. And last year we had one report, but issued no warnings to students or employees, and we had made no institutional referrals for any treatment or counseling. That concludes federal compliance for the evening. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to address them.
That actually wasn't boring, that was kind of, yeah, scary. But I have a question about something unrelated for you, Bruce. The folks talked about the Cradle to Career Conference that's coming up. Is that in Alaska this year? Okay, I was hoping it was here in Oregon.
Yeah, Ben will be joining them in Anchorage, but it's through the Gear Up grant, so the Gear Up grant is paying for all the transportation, travel. It's fully covered by that grant. Sure.
Thank you, Bruce.
Thank you.
Thank you. We have first read on board policy, chapters 4, 5, 6 for leaders.
Welcome back.
Welcome back. In a new role, welcome
In a
back.
new role. I didn't bring my new hat that I'm wearing with you all, but let me just start by saying what a pleasure it has been to be retired and to continue to observe all the wonderful things happening here at the college. I've always thought we're in a very special place. You all had Patrick for 20-some years, and then I was here for 10 and a half. I think you've got your next long-term leader here. I'm really honored to continue to be a small part of Marshall's team as far as supporting the college up to your 7-year reaccreditation. So my title now is a part-time remote position of accreditation liaison officer. And so my role is to do all the interface that happens between the Northwest Commission and institution happens in 2 places. That's president and your accreditation liaison officer, or ALO, and that's the more technical of the roles. And it is ensuring that we just remain in compliance with all the rules and regulations and oversight of Northwest, and small matters like, as excited as we all are about Bachelor's of Science in Nursing, we can't be out there saying definitively that we will offer one, because until Northwest approves it, we can't say that. So all sorts of things behind that. And what I'm really here tonight is around one of our favorite topics for the continuing board members, all our board policy work that we've done. Yay, policy. And but that also relates to this accreditation role, because we have then coming up for the college, 2025, the year that we're in now, is our year 6. And there's a review that happens of policies and finances and sort of those kinds of infrastructure types of things. And that will happen in fall of this year. And we have to submit our reports on that pertaining to those things 6 weeks prior to. So really by the end of the summer, we need to be all caught up on all these things. And so this was something that, Marshall and I discussing. It's just there's just a lot of policies and things to go through. We started the work together last year with our most recent review and got pretty far, but not all the way. And then we kind of diverged into the hiring of your next president and spent less time on policy review last year. So I offered to pick that up, but technically any policy change recommendations are coming from the president. The president is identified as your policy consultant. So while he is relying on me to do some of that development, all of this that you'll hear tonight has gone, through Marshall as well. This president, yes. Yes. So with that, I'll be talking to you about 2 things. The first is kind of straightforward, and that's a normal, your policy review packet. And so there's no presentation up there. You should flip to it in your binder. And this is our first read. So the normal practice whenever there's a policy change or a review with no change is to have first read in one meeting, and then you will take action in the following meeting. So your packet there, and it's labeled E.A, first read, board policies, chapters 4, 5, and 6. So it's a good chunk of policy in here. For continuing board members, you'll recognize the format. This is how it's come to you before, wherein And I'll wait a minute till. You've all-
Page numbers.
All right, maybe you have a tab somewhere under attachments, yeah.
So discussions will take place after the first read, is that correct?
The discussions, so the typical process on this, if anyone has any immediate questions during first read, it's really at the discretion of the chair how much time you want to devote to that in the initial first read. So there's usually, a little bit of discussion in the first read, but then folks are invited that if they have more specific questions to email those in the first 2 weeks after that meeting. And that gives time to provide, and whatever the questions and the answers are regarded will be provided via email to the entire board, so everyone can kind of know what that is. And just over time, we found that to be the more efficient way of.
And we're ready to vote on
What, so you're ready to vote on the following meeting. And, there's a lot of policies, so altogether for all your board policies, there's 120 of them. And the Northwest sort of guidelines or expectations is that the board would have, that all policies get looked at within 5 years. So we don't, this is 2025. So you all would want your dates for last review on all the policies to be, 2020 or forward to fall within that 5 year. And we got a lot of them done, but there's still, some to work through. So that's sort of the process. And then your packets will have, if you want to turn the page to, there's a summary of policy changes table that you will have. And that's the best overall way of looking at this. So it lists all the board policies that are being reviewed and touched in any way during, this, in this group here. So it'll give you the board policy number, the name of the policy, and then a column for, what's the nature of the change. So there is one new policy, board policy this year, and then the rest of them really are very much in the minor category change or the no category change. The minor is usually because there's been a change in a legal reference in that policy is relying on, so we need to have those up to date. Oh, I neglected to mention, but it's in the memo, so we, along with many other community colleges, subscribe to a policy service through the Oregon Community College Association. And that policy service became available to us in, I think, 2017 or 2018. And we jumped on that because when we did our first policy review in 2015, we had many policies that were far out of date. And really the process was spending time looking at other community colleges' board policies to find legal references. So in this way, OCCA provides templates that are legally compliant for all of the policies that are either legally required or advised or sort of best practice. They don't have 100% of the board policies out there because each district might have some things that are unique to them. So that policy service, and then colleges take that and then they adapt it and many times all we change is to put in the name and perhaps job titles unique to us. But sometimes there's something that, locally we feel is important to stress, in the policy. So that's overall how our board policies works. And then the policy service every year, usually in the summertime, they put out the legal update, which is, does something happen at the state or the federal or with the Northwest? Those are our three main compliance areas. Does something happen there that would cause us to need to go back and look at that particular policy and update it in regards to whatever compliance changes have come along. So any questions on the process on all of that? All right. And then in your packets, so you'll have this summary table here, and then you have a listing of each of the policies, which if you happen to look at this online, on your iPad or something, then these are all it's a table of contents that you can click on that page number, and it'll take you directly to that policy. And then when you look at the individual policies, you will see if, so just turning to page 3 of that first example, it's a new policy, so it's all in yellow, right? Because everything on there is new that the college did not have before, versus the next one, so the one, of course, auditing fees. We did have some changes in language in there that are recommended. And also, for example, on that one, adding in language about, Oregon has the senior, that senior as in living the prime time of your life, senior, not high school senior, but the senior tuition waiver program, and our prior board policy on fees was silent on that. So those are some examples. I'm not going to, I'm sure you're all dying for me to read through all 24 board policies, but if you're, I certainly entertain any, questions. Most, as I say, most of them are none or minor, and then there's an explanation of what that is. We do have a couple of changes in policy numbers. We're taking the tuition and fees policy, which has lived all this time in finance. We're moving it to the student affairs chapter. It seems a little more student-friendly to have your tuition policy be, over with those policies that are, about how we support students. And sometimes there's, because the subscription, the policy service that we subscribe to has a defined set of numbering, and occasionally we might have a legacy policy that's using a number that has now been assigned to something else, so we don't need to change the number to accommodate that. So, yeah, I say at this point, Debbie, if however you want to proceed on this.
I would say that it is first read, so go through it, and within the next 2 weeks, if you email back any questions to, who should we send them to?
Well, I would say Marshall, Lori, and they'll just be more efficient, yeah.
The 3 of you.
Yep.
Okay, so if
Debbie,
you have any
yeah.
questions on any of the changes, what they mean, or if you want more explanation, you can email them and then be ready to vote on them at the next meeting.
Same email address for you?
Yes, the same email address, yeah.
Can I just have quick clarification? Is that okay? Sure. To do real quick. When you're talking about the new grading system established, is that like A, B, C, D, or is that how instructors are supposed to grade?
So at the board policy, so as board policy is very high level, so all the board policy says is that there will be a grading system established by the academic administration in consultation with the faculty. So this is not a change of current grading policy, right? So the current grading system is A, B, C, D, withdrawal, F, that. So none of that has changed. We just did not have a corresponding board policy that directed that such a thing should exist. So we were doing it, but the board wasn't telling us to do it, so.
We weren't in charge of it, but it was
yeah.
happening.
But we don't, as a board, say what the policy
No.
should be. We
No.
just say that there should be a
There should be a
policy.
Right, there
Deal
should
with
be a policy, and the key points being academic administration in consultation with faculty.
Gotcha.
So those, I think, from a
We
board
don't-
level.
We don't need
would
to
be-
get in the weeds of all that.
Yeah, yeah. I do, Debbie, with your permission, there is one policy that,
Please.
the one that says it's a moderate change, and I think there might be questions on that, so I'll just, with your permission.
Which one is it?
So that is 6330, which is purchasing. And because I just anticipate we'll get a question on that, and it'd be easier to answer here in person. So that is, what's my page number on?
8. So
Page 8. So the purchasing policy that we had, 6330, I'd say the key aspect of this policy, this board policy, is to do 2 things. One is to say Oregon Coast will always be in compliance with the Oregon rules around purchasing, right? So that's Oregon Statute 279A, 270B, and there's something called the Community College Rules of Procurement. So that's the primary purpose of this. But the secondary is that the 6330 also lays out at what level, at what expenditure levels do decisions, purchasing decisions need to go to the board. So this lays out these 3 levels of also what we require in terms of bids in that. And that purchases over $100,000 or 100K or more need board approval to be authorized purchases. So you'll see that there are some strikeouts here, removing some language that was here before, and I think I would call it legacy language. When we first started redoing these board policies in 2015 or 16, there were pre-existing board policies with a lot of language, and the board at the time wanted to have some of that language carry over. But really looking at it fresh and I did this with Robin, some of the language was redundant and confusing. So the paragraph say, spelling out special procurement exemptions, we've struck that paragraph because those things all exist within the law, within 279A and B and the Community College Rules of Procurement. So we've already said that's how we do purchasing. So there's no need to spell it out again in the policy in terms of exceptions to that. And the other good thing about getting it out there is if that law changes, if we left it in here, we'd have to constantly go back and change that piece now. But now all it says is we'll be in compliance. So, and then the other thing is there was a line that said the Board of Education reserves the right to reject any and all bids if such action is deemed to be in the best interest of the college. So this is the place where the language is duplicative and a little confusing. Because up above, the purchasing limits are set that anything that's 100K or more comes to the board for approval. So inherent in that is the board can say no, right? So you have the authority, and not just authority, it will be a decision point on each contract over 100K, whether or not to accept that. So it's duplicative from that, but it also, by having it in there, because it says to reject any and all bids, it creates a confusion about bids under 100,000, right? So in talking with Robin about that, she's like, yeah, I never really was quite sure what that meant. So that's a recommendation to strike that as well and just have a shorter, clearer policy. So everything else is pretty much either the reference changed, a job title changed, something like that, or there's a grammatical error, I think, for the most part. That's your packet.
So again, this is not for you to vote on, this is for you to review. Many questions. Lori is working very closely on gathering all this information. So if you do have any questions, you can email the 3 of us, or just make sure Lori gets it. She'll make sure that we get it. I just want to say real quickly that having Brigida in this role has just been an absolute blessing for us as an institution, because you all have commented about how active I have been. Having an ALO at our institution allows me to do that, because I'm not having to spend as much time in the minutia of creating these documents. So, but I do want to assure you that we are working together regularly and communicating, and so I'm well aware of the work that's being done, and I just want to thank you for being willing to do it, because it has allowed me to do a lot of other things in the community which are greatly needed as well, so thank you for that.
Absolutely.
So any questions that you have, please, fire them off after you review this.
Back to Bruce again.
Nope, there's one
One
more for
more.
me.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Oh, no.
All right.
Oh, that's right.
Oh, no. So you have this memo before you, which
Yes.
you know me, I like to give a lot of context for things, but so after having just gone through and described to you all what the normal process is for changes in board policy, first read 1 month, time to process and all of that, and then you act in the following month. Every now and then something will happen where that presents a challenge. And I think we're all well aware that there's been a lot of changes in federal guidance since the change in administration. And one of those many changes is in regards to the interpretation of Title IX, for which you just received a great report from Bruce, looking back at the last 3 years. And what happened is that, Title IX's been around for a long time, and every now and then you will get from the Department of Education an interpretation of how Title IX should be applied. And so this college and all of higher ed were operating under an interpretation that was issued by the Department of Education in 2024. And that interpretation, they come out and they call them the Dear Colleague letters, right? Like, this is how this is going to be interpreted now, and this is what you need to do. So we, in fact, changed the board policy and the administrative procedures associated with it last year to be compliant with those 2024 changes. And the nature of those changes were to provide a broader understanding of the gender roles in that and LGBTQ protections, and also some protections around pregnancy and some things around the procedures and the processes, right? So it was an expansion of the Title IX interpretation in 2024. So we did all of that, and then on February 5th, I believe, so, no, February 2nd, so there was a decision in a court in regards to that 2024 change, and saying that the Department of Education had gone outside of its authority. And based on that court decision, all the institutions received another Dear Colleague letter saying that that in light of that recent court decision, that the Department of Education is now directing that we all roll back to the pre-2024 to the 2020 standard, which was the prior update. So all the colleges worked with Karen Smith, who is legal counsel for OCCA, and it's in the memo, but what basically the advice to all the colleges is you need to do this now. Even though we don't have the full new legal compliance rules have come out, but on the basis of this letter, in order to protect the institutions, we need to make this change now. So that directive gets us in a little bit of a place where we have to figure out in terms of our own process. So you all have a board policy that talks about when you're changing board policies, you read 1 month and then you approve the next, that you have 2 readings around board policies. So that makes it hard to make, if you're looking just at that, to make instant changes in something like this. However, there's other board policy that talks about just in general, that typically the reason for having 2 readings of something is to provide opportunity for public participation in case someone has, around that. And there's other board policy, and I cited in here, that says in emergency situations, you can waive that, that need for the second meeting to provide public input. And you also have another board policy that delegates not just authority, but responsibility to your president to keep the college in compliance. So it's a bit of a rock and a hard place. So so the way that the motion, you've got a recommended motion here that's worded, and that motion basically says, hey, we acknowledge that doing this in 1 meeting is outside of our normal board policy process. But in light of the need to, fulfill this, the responsibility put on our president to keep the college in compliance, it's an action that the board would need to take. And we're already, given that this was February 2nd that this notification came out to all the institutions, so we're already, it's been weeks since this went out. And then as a precursor to who knows what may come next, right? So we're adding 2 note statements to this recommended policy. And one of them is to, that this may again change at any point in time. And so the motion is authorizing now your president to make any further changes to this directly without going through the board approval process, because you have to wait for, a month or 2 months for each of that. So authorizing Marshall to take action in conjunction with, he'd be working with Bruce and OCCA advice and all of that. But we're gonna need to be really in a much more agile position to respond to changes that might come along in federal direction. And then the other sort of caveat here is that we are now in a position where the federal guidance around Title IX, which touches on issues of, protection and genders and discrimination, all that, is not aligned with the Oregon direction on those matters. So staff will need to, as things come up, and you read it in the policy, but figure out, is this a federal one? They'll try to apply it under the federal one, but if Title IX, but if it looks like that person would not receive, redress or an opportunity to be heard under Title IX, then it will be looked at through that state lens. So a lot of background. It's an unusual motion because it does not follow your normal board policy process, but it is consistent with your board policy that you're holding Marshall accountable for keeping us all out of litigation.
So essentially, I'm asking for an exception to board policy to move forward without a second reading right now.
And to take action on it tonight. So I saw Paul's hand first.
And just the question, so all higher education things are dealing with this currently right now. So
Yes.
this is not just in Oregon Coast Community College, it's
No.
Correct.
everybody bailing water on their.
Yeah.
Okay.
Correct. And by the way, also, this advice is coming to us from our OCCA legal representation. So that's why we're making this direction. Yes.
Understood.
And, I certainly support the flexibility that you will need to deal with these crazy circumstances that we're currently living under. But fingers crossed, they won't last forever. So I'm wondering if there could be some limitation to being able to just make those changes as needed. Once things start normalizing again, is there a way that we can build into the motion for a limited term possibly, so that you have that opportunity while things are as crazy as they are?
I think that we're walking a fine line there. I don't know. It doesn't
So this policy only relates to the Title IX. It is just this one specific board policy, 3433, which is the Title IX policy for the college. And I will say, as a board, you can come in at any time. So if things do settle down a year from now and the board says, hey, okay, here's the motion to rescind that motion or whatever. So you all have the authority to do that whenever you want. So.
Right.
And I would be hesitant to make any changes to something that's recommended from the OCCA, especially since we're all having to do this, unfortunately, more knee-jerk than we want to do. But I think we want to give us the flexibility to lean on their legal advice.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And it also, and so this only applies to this one, the Title IX, and it gives us the flexibility as a college to respond more quickly if new court decisions come out down the road. Right? So.
But how does that affect our students then? Because if you're changing the policy on how, let's say, certain people could become excluded, wouldn't that affect our students?
This is more of a protection.
This is exactly, and if we're not in compliance, we jeopardize our students' financial aid, because now we're not in federal compliance, so there's that as well. So I don't think that the intent is to jeopardize students. The intent is to make sure that we are in compliance with the laws so that our students are protected, because if we were not in compliance and that came up and then we got audited, we could have some problem on our hands. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes sense. I'm just trying to kind of take in the broader picture here of everything that's going on. Because, you know, clearly there's talk of doing away with the Department of Education altogether, right? So, you know, what's coming down the pike? You know, could they just be saying, no, we don't want this Title IX federal requirement anymore. We want you to discriminate students, you know, then what? Then what's the school gonna do?
So I will say that, that second note that says if something is not, basically if it doesn't fit under Title IX, it will be looked at in the state of Oregon standards, which has in many ways then, you know, broader and stronger protection for these potential categories that might, you know, this Title IX is really about equal opportunity and preventing harassment and discrimination, right? So you still, this wording here is for Oregon, gives us that sort of fallback. Even if the student no longer has a complaint under what federal actions happen in Title IX, it would still be looked at to say, well, is there something then in the Oregon guidance that would allow it to be, and, you know, the college isn't changing the rules on students or the policy on students. It's, in this case, the federal government that is, you know, as, so.
And, you know, I know the college really wants to protect our students the best we can and in all different circumstances.
Any other discussion? Do I have somebody who wants to read the motion?
Well, or are we doing the calendar first, or are we moving to an action item?
So it
This
is
is a
on,
whole different thing.
yeah, it's on the agenda.
It's on the agenda as an action item.
under action items, so, but Debbie, you can move it up if you want.
Well, we go ahead since
Yes.
we've already had this discussion.
Okay.
I'll make the motion. Do you want me to read the motion or
Yes.
say, okay? I move to approve and adopt the revised board policy 3433, prohibition of sexual harassment under Title IX as an exception to the practice under board policy 2410, board policies and administrative procedures, and authorize President Roach to update board policy 3433 and any related policies and procedures at any time to comply with rapidly changing state and federal laws and regulations. Any changes will be reported to the board at the next scheduled board meeting.
Second. Any more discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, the motion is carried.
Okay,
Good seeing you all.
thank you.
I wish it was on a different topic, but.
Yeah, no kidding.
Now we have Bruce, I think, on the calendar. Here it is.
Whose pool is that?
I want to be there. Is that what the bond is building?
Bruce, is this your presentation?
No, I'm having issues. That's where I wanna be right now.
Dreaming where you want to be.
Apparently. Wow. Well, you have that in front of you while she's trying to find that. It's right after the
Right after what we just
what
did.
we just talked about, yep, in your packet.
So, bringing back the 5-year calendar and with an edit that all the summer terms start dates have been adjusted so that they begin in July. We had some dates that started in June, and our practice is not to cross academic terms with fiscal years. And we didn't catch that the first time. Some of us are new. So we have adjusted those start dates and ensured that we can have enough instructional hours based on those dates for summer.
I think he's referring to me. Some of us are new because I didn't catch it either. So
That is the only change.
that's it.
Is that something we need to vote on, or is that? To adopt the calendar?
It's for your information.
It's-
The information, okay.
Yeah, it's an information item. It's not.
Okay,
You already voted on that,
I
didn't
think, well, but it's been revised.
This
so
is just a
this is the
revised change
revision
to
of
it based on Bruce's. Okay.
Well, thank you.
Thanks, Bruce. So we have.
You have me as a board, the OCCA update. I think you have that in your packet. And I'm not gonna talk a lot about it because it's got a lot of information here, but I do encourage you, if you're not receiving this email, to, on the back page of this, you can sign up to have it delivered to you. And it has some really good resources where you can just click on the link. And like, there's a lot about the things that are changing and where some of the events that are happening and, trainings and board resources. So there's an advocacy toolkit, which is really interesting because it goes through the bills that are going into Congress, and it tells you how to read them and what they have to do with schools and whatever. So I go ahead and take this out of the packet and take it with you, and then if you want to go ahead and get on the back page, you can get on their mailing list if you're not on there already. So that's all.
Lori gonna allow us to do that?
Yeah.
It seems like that's kind of a.
One at a time, not as a group.
Yeah, I want to echo that. There's obviously a lot going on right now, so it's very, very good if you do have the time to stay up to date on it.
Very nice.
Yes, anyway, so it's got a lot of good information. Anyway, that's all I'm going to say because you can read it here. Yes,
I'll just say, I believe it was emailed to you all in the packet.
I did ask Lori to do
So
that,
you
but
have a digital copy.
Put it back in here.
Oregon School Board Association, they kind of put out lists of, all the legislative, changes that they're wanting.
yeah.
So that's also like.
Yeah, and theirs is more, is broader than ours.
It's a lot broader,
This is
yes.
dealing with just community college, things that are House bills that are affecting the community college, so. Anyway, so that would be my encouragement to you, and Marshall and I we're online together at the last meeting, so. Well, that's all right, so now we have any other board reports? Anybody go to anything that they want to report about? Okay, so we did action item A, but we're on action item B, which is accept the findings and fact exempting the GO bond construction project.
I move that we accept the findings of fact exempting the GO bond construction project from the traditional competitive bidding requirements and adopt the CMGC method of solicitation.
Second.
Any comment or discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Hang around for that?
Nope, so that motion is passed. Oh, this has been a marathon meeting. So we have announcement of the next meeting is Wednesday, March 19th in person. Please remember about March 15th Pearls of Wisdom, and the board retreat is going to be rescheduled.
Yes, so you all received an email asking for some tentative dates of SurveyMonkey, and Lori's going to be tracking that, and we're going to try to reschedule that. Again, trying to just make sure that we get as many people there as possible. Totally understand not everybody may be able to attend, but we definitely want to make it so that the majority of us can. And then working on the agenda for what that will look like. So just respond to that email from Lori if you would.
Is that a new one, or is that the?
It's a new
old
one.
It's a new one,
She
okay.
just sent it today?
Yesterday, I think?
Yeah.
Okay.
So it's a SurveyMonkey, you'll click on it, open it, and then there's like 5 different date options and
Okay.
times, and just pick the ones that work for you and let us know. And then on that note, before we adjourn, I just want to thank Lori. Lori has been providing a tremendous amount of support to the board, And I want to recognize the work that she's put into this, because this is daunting to plan these meetings and to get your packets ready and to track all this information, not to mention all the cleanup that has to happen with everything that we've decided. So I just want to recognize the work that she's doing and thank her for all of those efforts.
Who did the board policy documentation with all the links?
It was a joint effort.
Okay,
Yeah.
because that's a Hercules, once you
Yeah.
add table of contents and links, I would say I bow down.
Laurie's helping in many ways in a lot of different areas, so yeah, so.
And that's all I have, Madam Chair.
Okay, so that's all there. And we're good with the order, anything for the good of the order?
So March 8th is off.
March 8th is off.
Okay, we are adjourned.
Darn it, I was gonna use that to avoid a trash clean.